Hello and welcome everybody, I'm OneProperFan and this is CK3 Dev Diary number 38 Legacy Showcase. This is an interesting one, but before we jump into it, I do want to point out that my voice may sound a bit differently. That is because starting on Sunday, I had no voice at all. I'm very happy that I'm back to having, somewhat of a voice. I'm pretty sure that you can still hear that I'm not the same, but at the end of the day, I'm self-isolating. I'm doing fine, don't worry about it. Make sure to take care of yourself and to take care of everybody around you. That is the most important part here. I just want to point out if my voice gives in, if my voice gives out, if, sometimes I lose control of it, then that is why. Now, that being said, today we got Legacy Showcase, and that means we're going to be talking about legacies. A very interesting topic, primarily because it is, of course, a tool to guide your dynasty through the literal centuries of Crusader Kings. A very cool tool, but before we jump into this, I just want to say, essentially, the main benefit of legacies compared to Crusader Kings II Bloodlines, because I often see in the comments, hey, will Bloodlines be in the game? And the answer is no, but yes. Bloodlines essentially were a very rigid system. You needed to meet very specific requirements if you wanted to achieve a bloodline, or you just married into one. Those were the two options that you have. And this very specific requirement comes with the issue that you're essentially looking at a situation where you need a great character. If you don't have a great character, you will not be able to actually achieve this. Meaning, for example, if you want to build a bloodline, you need to about, I think it's like 8k prestige. It might be 10k, I'm not entirely certain. But you need those, and then you need to go on and actually do the ambition and go into these phases. You need to build things, you need to have the money available, and all of it is tied to just one character. If you have a dynasty of entirely average characters, but they rule over, let's say, Ireland for 700 years, you will never get a bloodline. And that is a fact in Crusader Kings II. It is tied to just very specific ancestors instead of the entire legacy that your dynasty truthfully leaves behind. Crusader Kings III approaches this by, of course, impacting the well-being of your dynasty. If you have a great character, then that great character will be great for your dynasty, but your actual legacies are affected by how your dynasty as a whole is doing and how your dynasty as a whole is doing over time, making it so that, when you start in 867, your dynasty will be slightly, if not very different, in 1453. Now, with that being said, I do want to approach a topic that is sort of a bit more controversial in this aspect, and that is how do you unlock dynasties? Legacies, dynasties, of course, are always unlocked. You can see it right here. They cost renown. They start at 1k, then 2k, 3k, 4k, and 5k, so a total cost of 15k for this entire line of warfare legacies. Now, the problem that I have with that is not necessarily the renown. It is not that it costs something. It is not that you have to kind of plan ahead, because you can use renown, of course, for something else as well. You can use it to disinherit people, for example, all the good stuff there. But I will tell you that I have a bit of an issue when it comes to how you acquire renown. Now, that is because there are three methods of acquiring it, and I can say that because I literally said it as well in one of my explanation videos, in the introducing CK3 videos. The first reason is, do you have any living members in your dynasty? One living member, one living member gives you 0.02, meaning 50 living members give you 1 renown per month. The second reason is what kind of titles do members of your family hold? So, for example, if you're a king, you, for your entire dynasty, net your dynasty 1 renown a month. As you can see, 50 dynasty members are equal to 1 king of that dynasty. The third one, and I just want to mention it's not actually that relevant, I almost forgot that I wanted to mention it, which is why I paused there, but the third one is essentially, hey, do you have any family members that are married to any title-holding person? For example, if I'm the King of France and I marry my daughter to the King of England, then that will generate indeed renown for me. Now, the problem with this is essentially everything related to living dynasty members. Why is that? Well, think about it. If you are, let's say, in France and you start playing in 867 and you play for 300 years, how many dynasty members are you going to have? Because every single one of your dynasty members, unless you change religion, unless you found a new religion, that sort of stuff, will have 1 spouse. And 1 spouse can only give you so many children before they, are too old, or maybe they die in childbirth, maybe your character just becomes infertile. There's a lot of reasons to no longer have children. But you will always only have 1 wife. And now I want you to look at, for example, the Seljuks. I want you to look at the Umayyads. I want you to look at any Muslim dynasty, really, at any tribal dynasty as well. They have multiple spouses. And the problem here is that while yours is essentially like a line or like a bunch of lines, that is your dynasty. Everything in any part of the world that can have multiple spouses will be a right proper pyramid. It will be very wide, because all of these people will, you know, as long as they are landed, they will automatically take 3 spouses. They will have a good time with it. Maybe you can seduce someone, maybe you can claim their child, but at the end of the day, the benefit that you get out of the living members modifier is something that is not comparable to what, for example, Muslim dynasties make. And I want to point that out and at the same time say, hey, I need to make this a bit, you know, less weaponized, because if you think about it, these numbers, they can change in one patch. They are changeable so easily. We shouldn't truly be worried about them, but I do want to point out that I think when it comes to living members, what would be smarter is to say, for example, hey, up to 200 living members, you get 0.02 per living member, and then starting with the 201st, they only generate 0.01. Okay, so that for the first 200, you make 4 renown points per month. Yep, that's what I wanted to say there. And then for the next 200, you would be making only 2. So it's effectively halved. And after that, you can say, okay, what about we cut it down even further? We go down to either nothing, or we go down to 0.001. So very, very little. All I'm saying is if you don't do that, then you are going to have very, very wide dynasties that are going to have a very negative impact on the general legacy gain over there, because they will just never be starving on renown. Whereas again, in, but in a monogamous society, you will be having much less legacies, you will be having much less renown. It will actually be a scarce resource, which I am sure it is intended to be. That is just my 2 cents on the topic of renown. On the topic of legacies when it comes to earning renown. And now let's move on to the actual legacies and to the actual dev there, because I really wanted to point that out. I think it is important that that is in the picture. Now let's start with warfare. Again, 15,000 to unlock it all. Really sweet art. I mean, this art is just absolutely outstanding. Now, what do the bonuses actually do? House of Warriors, additional +2 prowess skill, as well as increasing the effectiveness of knights by 15% for landed members. Absolutely great. This is some good stuff. This makes it so that if you pick this early, you are in a magnificent, in an incredibly strong position. Seriously, this just gives you a huge bonus. 15% of knights' abilities to fight. When, you know, if you have an outstanding knight, that knight will become a literal machine. Generational Belligerence reduces the cost of going to war by 20%, primarily making conquest and third-party claims wars easier to declare. I think this is fine. It's an okay one. Honestly, I don't have a strong opinion on this one. I think if you miscalculate the cost of declaring war, then that's sort of on you. You know, you can always see it in the actual warfare menu. I think that is interesting. But at the same time, of course, this is a perk that sticks with you over literal centuries, and that means that when whenever you go to war, you save 20%. So ultimately, you were saving literal tens of thousands of whatever resource you're using to go to war. I think ultimately, I guess, you know, when you consider it, indeed worth it. Squire Traditions makes all members gain 10% more martial lifestyle experience. Boring, but most of these trees have this, most of these perk tracks have this, so fair enough. Inherited Tactics is a fantastic legacy for winning wars, as it gives the dynasty members +5 advantage while leading armies. Now they do point out your enemies could always recruit your family members and use them as commanders against you, but I gotta tell you, if I have a choice of just saying, okay, I always get a +5 advantage, I'll take that. This is really nice. I can't complain about this one. Private Army Legacy unlocks an additional slot for men-at-arms. This is not to be underestimated, as there are no other sources of additional men-at-arms slots except for increasing your tier. Additionally, it also gives you access to the House Guard Regiment, a special regiment of heavy infantry men-at-arms that is free, but takes up 1 men-at-arms slot and can't have its size increased. Now I understand this, that if you weren't to use the House Guard in this slot, you could increase the size of whatever you chose, for example, Armored Horsemen, which is huge. I mean, that is just big. That literally puts you ahead of the curve right there, makes you into a formidable force, even if you yourself are very bad at warfare. I do think, though, that the House Guard Regiment, since it is free, no matter, you know, what level you are at, whether you're a count, a duke, or a king, or an emperor, I guess, I think that the House Guard Regiment is very useful if you have a bunch of smaller people. You know, if you kind of bet on your dynasty being counts and dukes in your realm and in other realms, I think that is very, very attractive right there, because it makes it so that they have the edge on any competitor at the same level inside of the realm. I think this is a pretty neat one. It does come, and I just want to point that out again, it does come at the end of it though, so that is after you invested 15,000 renown. So we're talking about a century 2 maybe, I don't know, into the game. Think about it. In the let's say you make 4 renown every month, right? 4 renown every month because you have that many family members. And let's say you make another 2 because you have 2 kings. So you make 6 renown every month, meaning that you make 72 every year. So in 100 years, you'd be making 7,200. Yeah, and there you go. So this takes ages. I don't know whether, you know, in the actual late game, private army would still be worth it. Now, of course, you might be making many more points of renown throughout the time. This was just a linear calculation right there, but I will say it does take a long time. Law, let's talk about law. Also, again, very nice piece of art. Stability and consolidation is, of course, the sort of target of the law thing here. The writer, Rager, I think, thank you for writing it, by the way, says, I usually offer it when I play in as a vassal in the Holy Roman Empire or the Seljuk Empire, as the subjects you have are quite diverse. That is, of course, true. They have different cultures, sometimes different religions. All of that stuff is going on there. The first legacy, mostly fair, increases popular opinion in your domain by 5. This is quite powerful and even offsets the entire penalty for being the wrong culture in the same culture group. I think this legacy is very specific. I don't see myself starting with this one unless I'm in a very multicultural, multi-religious area. Faithful Magistrates increases passive control growth by 0.2 a month in your entire domain. This is really nice. Control determines how much you get out of the potential that you could get from a province. So, for example, let's say a province can make 10 tax a month, which is huge, but let's say it can do that, then your control needs to be that far up to actually make that money. If it isn't that far up, then you won't get that much money. So getting this up without any further cost, because it just ticks up, you know, on its own, I think is big, especially if you are to conquer things later on into the game, because those things will then immediately start ticking up. Power and prosperity boosts steward lifestyle experience by 10%. Boring, we all know about it. Delegated authority increases your powerful vassal's opinion of you by 5. See, my apologies. I gotta tell you, if your realm breaks apart because of 5 opinion missing, you're doing something else somewhere else wrong. And like, that's just my player take on it. I think this still can be useful for the AI. I think this can indeed help the AI manage their realm much better. It's, you know, if you have an AI that rules over kingdoms of your dynasty, gets this bonus, yeah, I mean, possibly it can help. At the end of the day, I don't think, again, I don't know. I just don't feel like 5 is that significant a number there. And last but not least, home estates increases your domain limit by 1. Yeah, that's nice. I guess that's my feedback there. Like, law is just like, it's nice, you know, you can build tall and whatnot, but it's not adventurous. This is not the thing that you look at to like do things. This is the thing where you just build up, which is nice. Not saying anything against it, but I will say this won't bring you into the action. You know, having 5 more vassal opinion, powerful vassal's opinion, just for the record, not even all vassals, just the powerful ones. Powerful vassal's opinion plus 5 is not something to write home about, I think. And you gotta consider it costs 4,000. I don't know. I think the warfare one much stronger here in this regard. Now let's take a look at Guile. Guile is, of course, the alternative for scheming characters. You can see right here, add a wall, then the inn and an archer and another archer. No, you can't ever have enough archers. Now let's start with Ominous Reputation. Dread gain by 20% increased. Big. That is such a good starting position right there, making it so that your vassals will indeed always stay cowardly behind, you know, whatever they are, I guess, behind the wall right here. Very strong one. Long Reach increases hostile scheme success chance by 10%. This is also applicable, of course, not just for murders, but for hook, fabrication, abduction, and all other hostile schemes. And now, of course, this does mean that other kinsmen could be plotting against you, but I gotta tell you, plus 10%, also really good one. These two are great. Natural Schemer boosts your experience, that's fair. Venial makes tyranny decay 20% faster. Huge! I mean, this is great. This tree, this perk sort of a path right here, amazing. If you want to play anybody that is Guile, that is, you know, tyranny, that is dread focused, huge bonuses right here. The tyranny decay in particular is really nice, because I feel like in Crusader Kings II we were in a situation where never ever anybody went and said, okay, I'm going to consciously and freely pick up tyranny. People desired to never pick up tyranny. Now with this, it actually becomes a sort of balancing game, right? Hey, picking up tyranny isn't that bad, especially if you're dreaded. People won't do anything against you anyway. In CK2 it would be a guarantee for people to do something against you. So I actually really like this as well. It opens up a new alley of gameplay. Family connections. Legacy gives each dynasty member a major chance of avoiding one successful murder scheme targeting them. Very, very cool. I gotta tell you, I think warfare is strong. I think law is okay. I think guile is outstanding. Let's talk about blood. Noble Veins has 2 bonuses. Firstly, it improves the chance of inheriting good congenital traits by 30%, very nice, and then it adds 30% to the admittedly small chance for new good genetic traits to randomly appear. Quite a good one, especially if you do want to play the breeding game, especially if you do want to create the absolute Adonis dynasty, the Chad dynasty. I think this is the starting point right here. I mean, especially for a starting trait, this is very significant. Next up, Conversion Blood increases the chance of reinforcing genetic traits by 30%, so that means that you were to go up from the level 1 to level 2 or level 3. Really good one. I think it works, especially if you're focused on that sort of gameplay. Resilient Bloodline is much like Noble Veins, but it reduces the chance of bad genetic traits appearing randomly or propagating also by 30%. Again, very, very focused on the same topic, but I mean, it is called Blood, let's be real, and this is a very nice one. I like all these 3 so far, but only if you do a certain game style. I think for most gameplay, for most playthroughs that I do, this one, Blood won't be that attractive. Maybe the first one, just because this is really nice, but beyond that, you know, the rest, you really need to be on a bit of a let's breed the perfect dynasty run to actually use this, I think. Architected Ancestry allows you to select one of the following traits to more commonly appear among your dynasty members: beauty, physique, intelligence, fecund, so that would be fertility, giant, dwarf, scaly, or albino. Very cool. I mean, at the end of the day, isn't it all worth it just to be a dynasty of scaly people? The Argonians have arrived, and I gotta tell you, this is really cool. No, I really think this is nice, especially because it isn't just, hey, pick a positive trait. You can just be a giant, you can be a dwarf, you can be scaly, you can be albino. All of which is fun. All of which makes your dynasty very unique. Now, I do want to point out, the chance for each newborn child to get the trait is roughly 2%. So still not that significant. You need to still breed it into your dynasty, because randomly appearing is still very, very unlikely. And then last but not least, Octogenarians increase life expectancy by 5 years. Unlike a flat health boost, this also makes women able to carry children for 5 more years and makes character portraits visually age slower. Very cool. I think Blood isn't as strong. It's highly specific. It's something that you should only invest in if you really want to go for that on that run. But I will say this is a great perk tree, no doubt. Erudition is next. Vibrant Court increases your court and guest opinion by +10 and makes your court attract better guests. If you plan to expand early using foreign claimants, that is the legacy for you. This one is a really strong one, albeit situational. So this one can be absolutely outstanding, or sometimes if, for example, a claimant comes and they come from a kingdom and you're just a count, you will never defeat the king. So in that case, you know, they might be a bit of a waste. But I think this is a long-term investment anyway, because this just makes it so that you can pick it when you start out, or you can pick it 200 years in and then destroy whatever empire you're facing right in front of you. I think this is still a good one for sure. Ordained Rulership increases your piety gain by 10%. Very cool. I like it. A very easy source of piety, and that permanently. The earlier you pick this, of course, the better your piety will fare over the centuries. Treasured Knowledge boosts learning lifestyle experience. Okay. True Believers gives your dynasty a +5 clergy opinion. Again, with a +5, not settled that you want to spend. I mean, think about it. It's 4,000 renown. I'm personally just not settled that I would spend 4,000 renown for +5 clergy opinion, and if you do not have a clergy, you will instead gain a +3 flat increase in opinion for characters of your faith. That is for everybody of your faith, which is cool, but it's a +3. I don't know, man. There's just, you know, when it comes to these bonuses, obviously, if you give it a +10, for example, that's overpowered. At that point, you will never be toppled. But like at the same time, like +5, I don't know. Do it a +5 plus like a bonus, some sort of bonus, anything, you know, that could drive me into clicking this. Because right now, I'm just like, I don't know, +5 doesn't. If my empire, again, falls apart because of +5 opinion that I'm missing out on, my mistake was somewhere else. It's not going to be a game changer. Maybe it's going to be a game changer for the AI in your family that, you know, now has more stable realms. Maybe, and maybe that is a good argument for this. But I think from an actual player perspective and how you see the game, I don't think too much changes here. And then last but not least, Bureaucrats increase the base progress and impact from council skills on council tasks by 10%. That is huge. I mean, this is just really big. If you have a great counselor and then the council task is increased or sped up by 10%, amazing. I think this is really good. Again, at the end of a bit of a mixed bag, but I think at the end, Erudition also a good tree. Glory is the next one, I think the second to last one indeed. A desirable match increases marriage acceptance by 30. I like that. I like that a lot. I think this is really good because it opens up early. And not just that, but as they say right here, the Gallantry Lifestyle Tree perk can increase this to a total of 80 extra acceptance. That is huge. I mean, that is insane. That is really good, especially if you want to marry up, especially if you're looking for, you know, for example, matrilineal marriages and you're just at the minus 10, minus 15. I've seen that both, well, in CK2 I've seen it. I've seen that. All I can say, very, very cool. I really like that trait. Or rather that perk. Renowned name increases prestige gain by 10%. It's essentially the, you know, respective trait from erudition, but for prestige. Then earning respect, diplomacy, lifestyle increases by 10%. It's very passive here, which is like a bit disappointing. Glory has a bunch of passive focuses, and you can see that here, yet again, assertive rulers reduces the short reign penalty by 20%. Big, again, will make it so that your realm will be much, much more stable, but also it's just so passive, you know? On the other hand, what you have, for example, even what you have in law, very direct. You will always feel the impact of, for example, the domain limit by 1. You will feel the impact of up here, the private army, right? But I'm not so sure that you will feel the impact as significantly when it comes to the short reign penalty. And then last but not least, righteousness increases general opinion by 10 with everybody. Big. I like that one. I like that one a lot, but again, after 14,000 renown have been spent. God. And then last but not least, kin. Very, very cool. I like kin. Let's talk about why. Bounteous loins increases fertility by 10%. Pretty decent. If you picked it up very early on in particular, you can probably pump out a lot of heirs and go very hard on renown, so I think this is a good one. Studious youth makes it much more likely for members of your dynasty to get good education traits. That is big, because a good education trait directly impacts how you do in terms of gathering lifestyle experience. For example, if you have a level 4, which is the highest one, martial education, you'll be looking at a 40% increase in martial education experience if you were to choose that as a lifestyle. This is big, seriously. This is a big one, because this means that more of your children will actually have more XP to go around. You know, if they are rulers, they will have more lifestyle perks, meaning that they will be able to better rule. Really nice. I think this is actually really significant. Constant care increases spousal opinion by +10 and lowers the chance of complications during pregnancy. It's a good one. Nothing against it. Close bonds gives a dynasty opinion bonus of +5. And then 30% increased success chance of personal schemes against dynasty members. So that is personal scheme, sway, elope, etc, etc. So this one might be towards the incestuous side of things, but generally a good thing, especially if you run a clan empire. You got to think about it this way, right? If you run a clan empire, most or many of your vassals will be dynasty members. And if those dynasty members generally have a higher opinion of you, already very nice. But again, only +5, not overpowered, it's not that strong. It's fine. I think ultimately, when I'm complaining about these +5 opinions, it's just like I would like to have a bonus that you can feel a bit more, because think about it, legacies are not supposed to be incredibly overpowered, because that is what your character already does in their lifestyle perks, you know? That is where the power comes from primarily, and I think that is a good thing, because that makes every character different, even if their dynasty has a slight increase in, for example, opinion. So at the end of the day, I guess like most of my complaints there are not that serious when it comes to the nature of their concern, but I still want to say, I mean a +5, you know, at the very least here you have this 30% increase of personal schemes. Oh, and I don't even know what that means. I don't use the forums, I'll be honest with you. But whereas, you know, what you have right here, you just get a clergy opinion. If you had a +30%, I don't know, if you request money, you get +30% more or something, or they pay you more, you know, that sort of stuff. If that was done inside of this perk as well, I think I would like it much, much more. I think close bonds is better than, for example, the clergy opinion perk. And then graceful aging, I mean, it's just huge. This one is big. Dynasty members do not lose prowess with age. That is big. And normally all the characters lose prowess with time, making a once great knight easily beatable by a young upstart in personal combat. It also gives dynasty members a chance to randomly gain skills when growing older, making the elder members of the dynasty truly wise and very useful as commanders, knights, and counselors. Huge. Kin is very strong. Kin is a very, very strong one. I do want to mention, by the way, I don't think law is weak necessarily, I just think it's not that impactful. I think it is still strong. Warfare definitely strong, law is fine, guile very, very strong for one particular playstyle. Whether you want to commit to that over centuries is a different question, but very, very strong. Blood, definitely perfect for what it does, right? Then erudition, I mean, yeah, it does what it needs to do, I guess, and same goes for glory. And then you have kin, which I think is also a very, very strong one, in particular because of course, graceful aging. Now, with all that being said, what do you think? What are your favorite ones? What do you think about my input on the topic of renown gain? Let me know in the comments and I'll be reading them because I definitely can't talk anymore. And with that, I would of course like to thank the trusty members of the channel. That is the Barons, Stefan the Pelted, Achilles, Know-How, Eterna, Folding Phoenix, Jacob, the Musiala, Dan, Florian, MFV, Mitchell, Aaron, Stefan, Snywolf, Drangili, Valerius, Monster Furby, Jake Clear, The Leopard, George, and Fonsurf C. And then of course also the Counts, Locked In, Wombat, Shifty, Rex Romanorum, Kazen, and Mujn. And last but not least, the absolutely gorgeous Dukes, Eric, Kiriana, Goodfield, Nathan, Jack, Kenneth, Lexo, Larry, Solowing, Pixie, Thomas, and Nick. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. I will now go back to bed and I will see you later, alligator.